When I think about the times that I got frustrated, upset, or angry, and then I go and I analyze what happened, why did I get upset? It's often the case that my expectations that I had were not met. Whether I didn't meet the expectation that I set or somebody else didn't meet the expectation, we have these outcomes that we think should happen. And when they don't happen, that's when the negative emotions come in. While it's not the only reason, I think this concept of expectations is a significant contributor to the unhappiness in this world. In this video, we're going to be talking about how our expectations as fathers impact us. We have expectations about ourselves, our partners, our families, and the people around us, and even our children. Are these expectations causing us to grow and be better dads? Or are they causing us stress and anxiety and impacting our mental health in a negative way? Let's dive into it. Hey guys, I'm Jason Kreidman, creator of the Dad University Parenting Program. If you are a dad of a young child and you want to go from overwhelmed and confused to calm and confident parent, well, my parenting course can help. I'll put some information in the description below. Reach out and contact me. Let's first understand the meaning of expectations. It's the belief or the feeling that something will or should happen. We form these expectations based on our experience, the information we have, maybe how we grew up, our surroundings. There's all kinds of inputs that help us determine what our expectations are. When it comes to being a father and the expectations we definitely have them in multiple areas of our lives. But for the purpose of this video, I want to discuss what expectations we have and whether they impact us in a positive or negative way. Let's go over a few areas of our lives that we have expectations as fathers. From the moment we think about being a father to the birth of our child to as they grow and beyond, we have expectations on how we should be as a father, how we should interact with our child. The expectations that we have about how we should be as a father often come from our own childhood and how we interacted with our own father. For some, it might be that we want to be exactly like our father. And for others, it might be you want to be nothing like your father. So you set your own expectations of how you intend to be. And then we proceed to should all over ourselves. I should spend more time with my child. I should go to my child's events. I should be more affectionate with them. I should communicate and talk with them more. But what happens when we have all these shoulds and we don't meet them? Well, for many dads, this is when we begin to feel like a failure. We begin to feel like we could have done a better job as a parent. All these expectations that we put on ourselves, and if we can't meet them, we then feel like we have failed. There is nothing wrong with trying to improve different areas of your life, and maybe you do that by setting some expectations for yourself with the idea of being able to meet them. The problem occurs is when we dig ourselves into a hole by feeling like a failure because we had set these expectations and have not met them. Now, let's talk about another area of our lives in which we have expectations as fathers, and it causes huge conflicts in many people's lives. That's having expectations about our partners. I believe that this is one of the major reasons for divorce. We have expectations about how our partner should be or what they should be doing. You may have expectations about how much effort your partner should be putting towards the child. You may have expectations about how much responsibility your partner should have around the house. You may have expectations about intimacy and how often you should be together. There can be many different areas in which we have expectations and we have them in our head and we rarely communicate them. And then when they don't happen, we get upset and a conflict arises. Communicating expectations is very important and can drastically reduce conflict. But it still doesn't solve the problem that we are putting expectations onto somebody else. Now, there's always argument by people that will say, well, of course. I mean, my expectations are justified and reasonable. I mean, any partner should do this or that and should be expected to do that. But your expectations are justified and reasonable to who? If your partner is telling you that your expectations are reasonable, then okay. But if you have ever heard the words unreasonable, irrational, unrealistic, then those expectations that you have might be viewed a little differently by your partner. I'm not here to say who is right and who is wrong. It's having different expectations that in this case would cause that conflict. So you better get on the same page. Just the act of having expectations on your partner has the potential for conflict. Now, another area as fathers that we have expectations are expectations about our families or the people around us. Do you currently or have you in the past had an expectation about the amount of time or something that your parents would do with your child? You want the grandparents to be involved in a certain way or spend a certain amount of time. And what happens when it doesn't go as you expected? Well, then some negative emotion comes up and you end up having to deal with that. What about the expectation that your sibling was supposed to come to your child's birthday and they simply did not show up? Or you ran into some financial trouble and just expected that your parents might bail you out or help you in that situation. So what happened when it didn't go as planned? That the expectations that you had and didn't communicate to anyone didn't happen. Again, I'm not judging whether these are justified or reasonable expectations. It's simply the act of us having expectations about somebody else that is often a source of conflict. And then another area that we have huge expectations as a father are expectations of our children. I actually did a video some time ago, I'll put a link here, in which I talk about how we have so many expectations around our children. Think about all of the expectations we place on our children from the time that they are born, and simply the expectation that they will do something in their crib, that they will walk, or that they'll say something, that they'll be quiet, that they'll perform a certain way in school or in activities. We constantly have expectations about our children. Some of those small, little, reasonable expectations, and then some we have that are simply huge expectations that no child will ever meet. Again, I'll ask the question, what happens when the expectation isn't met? When you expect that your 2-year-old is going to be quiet in a restaurant, or that your 3-year-old is going to play really well with the neighbor child, and you have these expectations and they simply aren't met. We get upset, we get frustrated, we get angry. This is the cause of so much of our stress and anxiety. While it's okay to have standards, it's our constant expectations about ourselves, about our partners, about our families, and about our children that has caused us to have so much unhappiness. So what is the answer? Well, it's an easy answer. Just don't have any expectations, right? Isn't that a simple answer? Well, it's certainly okay to have standards. The way to deal with expectations is to have a clear understanding that if these expectations aren't met, you have to have a way of dealing with it. What we typically do is have stress and anxiety or anger or other strong emotions when our expectations aren't met. But if you haven't communicated those expectations to your partner, to your family, or to others, then of course they aren't going to be met and it's unrealistic. But if you are communicating and somebody else has a different expectation than you, then you have to take that into consideration. And that's where compromise comes in. That's where communication comes in. So while there is no simple answer on how to deal with expectations other than don't have them, which isn't realistic, you do have to realize that the more expectations you have, the less are going to be met. And so if you don't learn to deal with unmet expectations, you're going to feel conflict all the time. So that's something that you want to focus on. Learn how to deal with expectations that aren't met. Was the expectation not communicated? Was the expectation not realistic? Well, who's to judge that? And like I said, two different people can have two different realistic expectations. And as a couple or as a family or as a child parent, you have to communicate that. So we have other videos on communication and such that can help with that. But for now, try to reduce your expectations and see how that works for you. I would love to hear from you. What is an expectation that you have as a father that's causing a little bit of problem or discomfort with you? Leave your feedback in the description below. Also, it really helps us spread our message and get this video to more people if you give this video a thumbs up. And as always, if you know anybody that might enjoy it, please share it with them. We'll see you next time.